Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update.
This conversation is brought to you by Zscaler. Experience the power of zero trust everywhere.
Money FM 89.3. We have a guest in the studio this afternoon. It's always more exciting when we get to do these conversations face to face. My guest is someone who spent years in boardrooms and on the ground with business leaders across Asia, helping them rethink what modern cybersecurity should look like. Welcome to Industry Insight. I'm your host, Lynlee. The pace of change in business today is relentless. New technologies are moving from buzz to baseline faster than ever. Boardrooms are grappling with not just what's possible, but what's essential to stay relevant. We're seeing AI go mainstream, threats get stealthier, and expectations on digital agility rise by the day. In this climate, the companies that succeed aren't just building defenses, they're also building for speed, clarity, and confidence. Today, we're taking a closer look at cybersecurity, not just a technical domain anymore, but as a driver of enterprise agility, operational resilience, and long-term trust. In recent years, cybersecurity has become one of the most defining challenges and enablers of transformation. No longer is it about ticking boxes, it's about how you stay resilient in the face of increasingly complex threats, how fast you can respond, and how confident you are in the systems that power your business. Today, we're taking a closer look. Joining me today is Sanjay Yadave, Vice President and Managing Director for Greater Asia at Zscaler, which is a leading cloud security company. Sanjay has worked closely with C-suites across sectors to help them modernize their security postures and adapt to an increasingly cloud-first, AI-augmented business environment. In this conversation, we'll be unpacking why legacy security architectures are fast becoming a liability, what a real zero-trust framework looks like at scale, and how you should rethink your approach to resilience. Sanjay, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Lynlee. Pleasure to be here.
Now let's start with what you're seeing in the field. Most organizations have probably moved past debating the importance of cybersecurity, but from your vantage point, how are the most forward-looking firms in Singapore and the region rethinking their cybersecurity architecture in 2025?
Sure. We've seen, obviously, a number of major technological shifts in the last 5, 10 and 15 years. Prevalence of mobility, IoT devices. Obviously, cloud has been the largest big shift in the last 10 years, and obviously now AI. And as those technologies become more widely used and deployed by enterprises and governments, security, cybersecurity and data protection means need to evolve with those. And so the most progressive companies that we see in the region today here are looking at how they can evolve and embed those security compliance controls and data protection methodologies into their technology stack as their business and organization evolves and grows.
All right, let's dig deeper. We've seen companies invest millions into security stacks over the years, and yet the breaches keep happening. So what's the core disconnect between these investments and real protection?
I think, as I was just saying, a lot of cybersecurity tools and technologies haven't necessarily evolved as companies have adopted more cloud and SaaS mobile applications. And so a lot of those old technologies were great for a period of 30 years, but as attack surfaces increase with a wider range of users and entities accessing applications, which are increasingly dispersed in different locations, whether it's private cloud, public cloud, SaaS platforms, the security and the way you secure it needs to evolve at the same time. And so when you simplify it, shall we say, traditionally, you would always connect and authenticate a user to access your network. And once you're on the network, once you're inside the environment, you then have access to whichever resources and applications and data you need. That now has become a liability. When you enable entities, applications, devices to access the network like that, you essentially allow lateral movement and the ability for movement around an environment, which hackers are now using as a way to get access to high-value assets, sensitive data. They're locking that with ransomware, or they're stealing the data altogether. And so zero trust and a zero trust architecture, which Zscaler is the global leader in, we've just been recognized in Gartner's Magic Quadrant, the leader in the Magic Quadrant for the 4th consecutive year. Now nearly 14 years in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant. So the architecture that we're taking to market prevents that risk. It prevents lateral movement. It ensures that the user or the entity accessing the application only has direct access to the application they need at that point in time. So zero trust, but verify and authenticate every time. So it's a one way of ensuring that companies' data is much more secure.
So it's about cohesion and clarity as well that ends up, if you don't have those, it ends up being the bigger risk, I think. It's fascinating, but for the benefit of our listeners, could you walk us through the typical life cycle of a cyber attack and where conventional systems tend to fail?
Sure. So maybe I'll use an analogy. Obviously, we talk about cyber attacks being focused on data. Let's take a very simple example of robbing a bank, for example.
Okay.
And there's 4 steps to robbing a bank.
I'd love to do that.
Obviously, robbers need to identify the point of entry, right? They have to discover where they would like to go and attack. And a bank may have many branches, and typically a bank robber might try and find the branch that's most secluded or has the weakest security. Maybe the CCTV camera's not working. Okay. So first of all, they find the point of vulnerability, and then they break in. Once they've broken in, they then move around within the bank. They move laterally to find the cash or gold, and then they escape. Right? Those are the 4 stages, right? Find, break in, move laterally, and escape. And a cyber attack is much the same. And now with the use of AI, a lot of bad actors are now using the AI to find the vulnerabilities within an organization's IT systems, to find the weak point, to be able to get in. And as I mentioned earlier, once you're onto the internal network, you're then able to laterally move around the environment and identify unsecure assets or data, which you can then lock with ransomware or you can steal. So those are really kind of the 4 stages. It also now become a big risk with insider threats as well. It's not just externals that are trying to get in, and there have been a number of famous robberies where that's been the case. A famous one, I was talking to someone around recently in 1983 in the UK. There's a very famous robbery, the Brinks-Mat robbery, where robbers actually used an insider guard, Anthony Black, to gain access to the warehouse where they thought there was about £3 million of cash. They actually found a further $25 million worth of gold and diamonds, which is about $150 million in today's terms. So when you think about your data being your prize asset and your bullion, so to speak, you obviously don't want to risk that being stolen or compromised. And so using modern technologies, modern cloud cybersecurity platforms like Zscaler is a way to ensure that.
Experience secure digital transformation with Zscaler. Find out more at zscaler.com.
Indeed. And you briefly talked about zero trust earlier. It's become a popular phrase, but not everyone is clear on what it really looks like in execution. So what does a real zero trust architecture entail?
So it's a framework, and basic pretense or the concept of it is that you trust no one and you verify every time. So when a session is active, you're ensuring that the person or device or the entity that's accessing an application has the right posture, security, and credentials to access that application, and then they're authenticated just to access that data and that application for a period of time, and then after that session, they don't have access. So even in the event that someone's credentials were compromised, there is no ability to move laterally around within the environment. So it's ensuring you just have that point-to-point connection between the person that needs the data, that's allowed to access the data, and the data itself. That also enables companies to reduce their attack surface by hiding all of the public-facing IP addresses that they have. So it's inherent within it, because you're hiding the vast majority of those public-facing IP addresses, you reduce the ability for someone to find an entry point, and then that entry point is highly secure.
And did you say it was app-based access?
Exactly right. And so when you think about applications, whether they're in your data center, a public cloud platform, or it's a SaaS application that you subscribe to, our service ensures the authentication and the authenticity of the endpoint. We can use inputs from other security services to ensure the location of the device is in the right place, accessing the application at the right time. So we take a lot of context about the user, and then we just ensure, based on a policy that the customer can define, that user can only access the applications they're meant to access.
Very interesting. So it's not about bigger walls, it's about fewer visible doors.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about companies still being breached and a lot of legacy technologies. Zscaler is quite disruptive in the sense that it drives a huge amount of simplification in a customer's environment. So a lot of the walls or barriers or perimeters that were set up in the past, where companies typically tried to build a very secure perimeter, like a moat around a castle. They tried to build a perimeter around all of their systems and environments. Zscaler, in the way that it operates through Zero Trust and the architecture, means you can remove a lot of those legacy systems. And so for a lot of the companies, that's a big deal, because companies are using sometimes as many as 40 or 50 or 60 different security tools and systems, which become easily redundant. So we help customers simplify and drive down costs at the same time as enhancing cyber and data protection.
Sanjay, we often focus on the tech stack, but culture plays a massive role as well. So what distinguishes companies that turn tech into transformation from those that just deploy tools?
Sure. I mean, technology shouldn't be for technology's sake. And, cybersecurity and security platforms like Zscaler are disruptive and pervasive. And in order to drive true adoption, you need to think about it in terms of how you change the culture and the mindset of the organization. It's no longer an IT problem or an IT initiative. As we said earlier, it's a boardroom discussion topic. Cyber protection's up there. In fact, increasingly because of Gen AI, data protection often comes up more as a board level conversation. And so, people need to lead from the front. They need to think about how they can have proactive approaches, policies, scenario planning, how they communicate cross-functionally within the organization across legal, HR, and different business leaders to make security and data protection really kind of a part of the DNA of the organization. So technology is one thing, but kind of the people and process piece helps really trying to drive culture and embed it within the organization.
Okay, bring it closer to home, Singapore and Southeast Asia. With Singapore investing in compute and AI training, what are the strengths and what's still missing, in your opinion, in the regional approach to cyber readiness?
So I think obviously training and awareness is a big topic. And I think organizations have been facing a challenge in terms of upskilling their organization. We do work with a number of educational institutions, and we're trying to help influence curriculums across the region here as well. But I think the awareness is increasing across organizations, and knowing that they need to be able to adapt to new ways of working. Companies are using technologies like cloud to enable and empower their businesses to operate in different ways. And that's also true for governments who are looking at providing things like e-medical records and other citizen services that are leveraging technology. I know that every time I travel through Changi, it seems like it becomes all that much more automated, in terms of facial recognition and those other means. So as you use those technologies, the security environment needs to evolve as well. But here in Singapore, we have a number of upcoming surveys and reports. One recently said that something like 80% of respondents were happy with the cyber controls they had in place. But when questioned later, said that 54% of them expect a breach within the next year. So it does go to show for me that there's a bit of a disconnect between what people think they have in place and the reality of protecting their environments.
Okay. And for leaders listening today, whether they're in IT or the boardroom, what are the first three things they should do to modernize their cybersecurity posture and prepare for AI-driven threats?
Sure. I mean, AI-driven threat is ever increasing, right? We're seeing use of deepfakes, more advanced phishing email attacks. Ransomware is becoming much more industrialized. And so I think organizations, other than kind of communicating policies to their teams more effectively, they really need to kind of rethink security and how they can modernize their security approach aligned with kind of the business and the way that they operate.
That's quite useful. I think a lot of our listeners will appreciate those insights you've been talking about. Sanjay, looking 3 to 5 years out, how will the companies that thrive with cloud and AI look different from those that lag behind?
I think it really comes down to agility, right? I think the organizations that are using AI, clearly, broadly within their business, but also using AI in the right way around how they do cyber and data protection will actually be able to be much more agile and adapt to their customers and the environments in which they operate much more quickly. And typically we'll see that with organizations who are leveraging technology at the forefront are able to outperform competitors. We see here in the region, when you get out of Singapore into markets like Indonesia and Philippines, quite a lot of companies are trying to leapfrog technology generations and catch up with competitors or expand into other markets through more effective use of technology.
Okay, and for businesses who might be wanting to find out more about Zscaler solutions, what should they do?
Sure. Well, reach out to me on LinkedIn or any of the team at Zscaler. Would love to be able to talk to those companies really about what they're doing and how they're using technology to enhance their business and how we can protect them along that journey. We're obviously leveraging AI ourselves. A lot of companies it's the buzzword at the moment, but we're leveraging that within our platform, specifically around data protection to help customers identify and classify data. We're using it in terms of providing AI-driven insights to provide more advanced breach analysis, but also insights and reports that are board level ready in terms of highlighting potential areas of concern. And companies are using that to report to regulators as well. So there's a broad range of capabilities we can support customers on, and largely it starts with the business conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Sanjay, for sharing such clear insights on how organizations should evolve beyond legacy systems and make cybersecurity a strategic driver of business performance. We've been speaking to Sanjay Yadave, Vice President and Managing Director for Greater Asia at Zscaler. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're listening to Industry Insight with me, Lynlee, only on Money FM 89.3.
This conversation was brought to you by Zscaler. Experience the power of zero trust everywhere.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.